Well, hello. Welcome to today's judging. We're doing the PADPS judging, that's at Padiham. And hopefully we'll get through this without any problems. Are we ready? Let us go then. Oh dear. Just so that you know, this is me. Scary, isn't it? So I'm going to move away from that one. Right. So we're doing your first lockdown open. Colour. And we'll just have a look through all of it, if you don't mind. Here we go. Whenever you're ready. Right. Petals. Autumn colour. Age of Steam. Cricket. Cold start to the day. Empty glass. Evening fountains. Gannet coming into land. Blackpool Pier. Splash. Bridgehurst Green. Looks a bit scary to me, that one. Fishing boat. Peeling. What's it peeling? An orange? A potato? Reflections. Misty mooring. Gull. Tree in evening light. Good morning, caravanners. Engine driver. Cartwheels. Invisible man yearns for a boat. Standing tall. Silent mooring. Jaguar. Jaguar. Depends what side of the pond you come from. Young squirrel deep in forest. Sunbathing. Pelican, wild and free. The large pot. The ropes that bind. The Pythagoras cup. St Andrews. Tony. Winter's scene. Pen and ink. Right. Well, that's all of them. So, shall we get on with it? First one. Petals. Beautiful colours. A gorgeous feel to it. It's very simple. Very soft in places, but you have got some that are sharp enough. It's a lovely feel to it. Very, very simple, like I said. So I'm going to start off with a hold on that one. Autumn colour. Right, some beautiful light on these leaves. But, in the process of turning, this gives a good mix of colour. The tree, the actual trunk of the tree, you've positioned in a very, very strong place. So I think compositionally it works. I'm not convinced that these really bright leaves, the bright green ones, and this sky over here work that well though. I think these are too bright, and the trunk itself is perhaps a little bit too dark. Not sure what you could have done about it. Perhaps come back at a different time when you haven't got so much light on here. Because that part, those just turning leaves, are beautiful and offset well with the trunk. And with that amount of brightness, that dark trunk does work. But with that amount of brightness, it's too much to really be comfortable with. And you've got this little bit of just catching the light right on the edge. And watch that at the bottom corner as well. But I think your main problem with this is the processing. There's very little detail in here. It's almost as if you've cropped in very heavily. Or maybe you've just processed a little bit too much. Anyway, let's start off with a mark on that one. I believe we're marking out of 10. So I'm going to start off with a 6 for that one. Age of Steam. Right. Yes, you've caught the steam and the movement. I love the steam you've got coming at the top, so that works very well around there. It's only a part of the engine, so we need something to really fix on to give us something strong to get hold of. And I think that bit of brass work around there does work to that extent. The wheels, you have movement in them, so you can't really, and these conrods as well, you can't really sort of be drawn into that as a important part. You got some lovely reds coming through here. A couple of bits that do bother me though, that and that danger sign, they get in the way a little bit. But other than that, I think it does work quite well. I'm going to give you I can do halves as well, can't I? I'm going to give you 7.5 for that one. Cricket. Yes, it's quite a fascinating bug. You've gone for the top view because you really would have great difficulty getting the side view. Side views are often prettier, but this isn't too bad. You've got the head sharp and the main part of the body. The wings and the back end are starting to go because you are at an angle to it, and that does make it very difficult to get everything in the very narrow plane of focus that you have. The background that it's on is quite odd. It's a very, I'm presuming it's man-made, but I could be wrong. I think the bug itself needs a little bit more clarity, more sharpness on there, so that it stands out a little more. But it's a good attempt, and it's worthy of a 7. Cold start to the day. You have beautiful snowy landscape. It's absolutely gorgeous. These trees are wonderful, where they're covered in snow and catch the light. Dead simple plain sky, and all this smooth snow around. Wonderful. don't know though why you've stuck these people in. Should have got rid of them. Or run to the front and get your shot, because the back ends of this messy group don't really help. Now if you had perhaps one or two, it might have worked. Probably if you got rid of that one and that one and left that one there, that might have worked, because he takes you into the picture. But the others, they are really a distraction. I think you're also lacking a little bit of texture in the snow, especially the brighter parts. Very difficult to deal with, but your situation is wonderful. But in this competition, that gets I'll give you 7 for that one. Empty glass. Yes, very clever. This is one of those shots where the shadow or the darks make it. That's really all it's about. And I think you've done that really well. Your lighting is pretty much perfect. I think the base that it's on is maybe not quite as perfect. I think maybe if you'd have sort of smoothed that edge out, it would have helped, or brought it down further to be right on the bottom there. But I think it's worth having another look at, so we'll hold that one. Evening fountains. Beautiful fountains with a gorgeous evening sky just peeking above. You've used the trees as a frame, and the wall at the bottom as the bottom part of the frame. Well, that's working. But overall, I think you've got probably too much going on. You've got this other fountain and this light, which are fascinating in and of themselves, but they don't really help to isolate this bit. And if you look, see where the water is against the sky, that looks amazing. But where it's against the trees, it's completely different. And then it gets to the bottom here and it's rather because there's very little light on this. It's not quite dark enough to really bring out the lights of the LEDs around it. And you use a very high shutter speed, or maybe a little bit of flash, and you've pretty much frozen the water. So you're up against it a little bit there. Maybe if you could have got further down and got more of that against the sky, and you would have got perhaps more of the sky in and less of the other bits, I think that would have helped. So tonight that's going to get a 7. Gannet coming into land. Yes, lovely gannet, absolutely beautiful, and I think you've got it just about sharp enough. The head is just going just a tad, the beak's nearly gone, feet are pin sharp, so I think it's just moved out of your plane of focus a little bit, but at the size it is, you get away with that. Like the little bit of land here, although this blurry flower in front is a bit distracting. It's quite a good size in the frame, but I think this extra gannet you have stuck down there, I don't think that one's doing you any favours. I think if that one was on its own, that would have worked. You might get away with just lopping that off, just above his head there, and then perhaps a little bit from the back there, so you don't have the sticky up bits of grass. Leave him on his own, then you would have even stronger image. I'm going to give you an 8 on that one. rather than holding it. Blackpool Pier. Yes. Beautiful colours. Again, gorgeous sky you've got there. The colours that are coming out in the rust as they're being lit by this evening sky is beautiful. You've given us the symmetry of splitting it and mirroring it, but you haven't done it on the centre, which gives you some discontinuities all the way down here at the joint, and I'm not sure why you've done that, because you could have moved this over just a little bit, perhaps a little bit more correction before you did, to allow that to actually blend together, and you wouldn't see the join then. And with a little bit of work on this bit round here, you wouldn't know that it was mirrored. So a little bit more work and you're really going to have quite a cracking image. I think your processing might be a little bit over the top, but for the arty effect you're going for, I can live with that. So I'm going to give you an 8 on that one. Splash. Yes, these dropping things in water are great. It's super exercise. Gets you used to lighting under quite difficult situations. And I think you've caught the strawberry at a good point, with enough of a crown on top and enough water and air being dragged down so you see its root. I think that actually works very well. Your strawberry itself isn't quite sharp, so maybe you need to just tweak your plane of focus on that one. I think you just missed it. But these are pin sharp, but your strawberry itself isn't. And the other thing which, if you really want to be successful with this type of image, is you've got to get rid of all the extra bubbles and mess on the glass and anything else you have around it, and extra bubbles coming at the side and at the top, and so you need to spend quite a long time tidying this up in Photoshop. And because you have a textured background, it does make it very difficult. That's one of the reasons people tend to use a black background, because it just makes post-processing so much easier, and it gives you a very powerful image as well. But you do need to tidy up. But have a look through your other shots from that set and see whether you've got one where the strawberry is just a tad sharper than that is. But good effort. 7. Bridge, Hurst Green. Yeah. Well, no health and safety on that bridge, is there? I don't think I'd want to cross that, especially if it was a bit soggy. And it's got moss on the top, which will be very slippy if it's wet, and nothing to hold on to. Well, rather you than me. But back to the picture. Yeah, the lovely shot of the bridge with the river running under it, trees on either side. There's nothing in the sky, which doesn't really help, because it's a very bright area, and you could, especially as the bridge is the important part of it, you could lop that off. Either lop it off just above the top of that tree, but that still might be too much. I'd be tempted to lop it off just below, so you lose all that horrible white sky. And then you've got concentration on here, and with some careful juggling with your exposures, post-processing, so you get your highlights back, because you lose them in the water, because it's again reflecting all that horrid sky, and some strength to the bridge, you could have a very good image. As it stands, the sky dominates, so although it's a beautiful bridge, your image is only going to get a 6. Fishing boat, peeling. Yes, you can see it's peeling. And they're great, these subjects, aren't they? A bit of detritus, a bit of mess, peeling, paint, really good. So I think you've done well to get really down, close to it, to get the angle looking up. And the rope coming down as well, that does help, although I think I'd like to see it come to the ground rather than just disappearing off the side. The issue you've got with this is your post-processing. You have pushed it far too much. You've increased your contrast and your local edge contrast as well, and you see around there that's gone completely solid black, and this is what we're looking at. This is what's keeping us really interested. This is just a bit of foreground, and that is just some mess in the background. And if you look around the rope, you can see that really big halo. It's almost as big as the rope itself, and a big halo around the top of there. So you've done a sharpening or an equivalent with much too large a radius, and it really has messed it up. So you need to go back in and reprocess that. And I'm just wondering whether you could improve it with a crop from this side, because we don't need that back there, and because the rope disappears off there anyway. Do we need any of this? We need that knot. So maybe cropping it somewhere down there might give it a bit more strength. Really puts the emphasis on the boat itself. Anyway, good effort. 7. Reflections. Yes. And you can make out the reflections, and there's some super reflections in there. And this massive, is it rosebeer willow? Possibly. Lovely colours in there. Again, this is an image where it's difficult to pick out something. Now you've got that bush there, or that bit of greenery and yellow, which is in a good strong position. But there's so much of this, and all these trees back here, and they don't really add any strength to the image. So I think you would be wise to really go in quite tight. Just from quick look at that, I'd be tempted to sort of lop big chunk off down there, get rid of all the distractions around there and up there. And I'd also change the title. The reflections, yes, you can see them, but compared to the actual plants, they're nothing. So have a title which really brings you in. If they are rosebeer willow, then let's have that as part of the title. That would help. But tighter, and see what you can do to bring out that and these colours, so we have some strength for it to really work with. 5.5. Misty mooring. Yeah. Now, this is one of those shots where you ain't got a black and you ain't got a white. It's all in the middle, in the greys. But it's one of the few images that would work like that. You have the boat itself in a very strong position on the golden mean, just in that corner, pointing in towards this island over there. I'm wondering whether it would be better to have a little bit more of that island in. Just have the asymmetry a little bit stronger, and then that's not running off. What else? Possibly a tad more strength to the boat, but not much. But I think overall it's got a lovely feel to it. There is a lot of area in the middle, but there is enough texture in. Another thought which just comes to mind, if that was not there, then you have nothing to balance that. And then all this big area becomes really sort of negative space to increase the strength of this. Worth having a play around with. As it stands, I think it's beautiful, so I'm going to hold it. Gull. Here we go. Here we've got the gull on its own, which is really good. And he has some textures in there. Background is suitably subdued. This one does have a couple of issues which are going to pull it right down, unfortunately. But the shape is lovely. Eyes good. You've got good body position. Wingtips just starting to go with a little bit of movement. I don't mind that. Other judges may be more upset by that. Well, I don't know why. And you just have that little bit of extra feather there going out of the frame. And that's one of its main problems. It's too big. It's too big in the frame. It needs some room around there. A little bit more, little bit more room around the bottom. But definitely some room at the top. And that would help with the other issue you've got, in that you've no fine detail. Now, I'm not sure whether it's because you have blown it up, made it bigger than it needs to be, or whether you have just processed the life out of it. Maybe some noise reduction gone wild. I'm not sure, but there is no feather detail. You have big halos around the legs, and you've got just no texture in there at all. No, it's flattened. So whatever you've done in post, you really need to go back, give it some more room, give yourself some more pixels to play with, and be much more subtle with your processing. So that one gets 5.5. Tree in evening light. Oops. Yes. It's quite an interesting tree and some beautiful light. Fortunately, the beautiful light's only catching a tiny little bit of the tree, and most of the tree is in complete shadow. You've also got these other distractions, these other sticky up bits, and this fence or whatever it is at the bottom. So I don't think you've got the best out of what you've got here. The background is gorgeous, beautiful light on there, but this down at the bottom isn't. And like I said, you need the light on all of the tree. So maybe if you were there a little earlier and could have got some more light on here, that would have been amazing. I don't think the light's going to get better for you. Come back tomorrow slightly earlier and see if you can. The other thing would be present this rather than a square image, possibly as a portrait, sort of down here. I wouldn't bother with this bit at the bottom. You either need more of that or less of it. I'd be tempted to crop through there and up here, and then just use these, because they are quite dark, and if there's less of it, you might get away with it being there. You can't crop it off all because you're going to lose the side of that tree. With the lighting you've got, you need to do a little bit more processing to bring out some more of the life in the bit that's in shadow, because it's all pretty grey, and that is doable, but you have to be careful. So let's have a think. As it stands, it's a 6. Good morning, caravanners. Yes, wonderful sky, absolutely gorgeous sky, and I love the way it's setting these trees on fire. They've got the little branches and some tiny leaves on there, and they just lit up with that gorgeous sky. That is fantastic. And then we've got the caravans, and with all the will in the world, a caravan park is not pretty. You really have to do a lot of work to make a caravan park pretty. And even in this gorgeous light, you know, that has a little bit of life to it, but the rest just look like boxes. So, right time of day, right direction, right exposure, wrong foreground. I don't know whether you get away with just lopping that off. I don't know. I haven't tried it. You might. Have a try yourself, but get rid of the caravans. The other thing, of course, is at the time, run down the other side and get the other side of those trees and get the sunset, sunrise, whatever it is. Sunrise, yeah, in all of its glory. That would have been wonderful. But sorry, your caravans are letting it down. I've nothing against caravans. I quite like going caravanning, but I think I'd rather have a tent though. So I'm going to give you a 6.5. Engine driver. Yep. I love his expression, his head just poking out of the side, looking forward. He's not looking at you, which is good. He's looking where he's going, so he's not going to crash it, and that works really well. I like him quite close to the edge as well. I think that he's in a good position there. And we come further into the picture and we get this big window, and then this big dollop of coal or whatever it is, and this bright bit behind showing through, and that doesn't balance his face. It just becomes a distraction. You end up flitting between the two bright areas, his face and that. You end up going back to the face because it's brilliant, but so again, I know I'm doing a lot of hacking, but it's worthwhile. Get rid of that. See what your picture looks like. Sorry, I don't think you need it. It's not adding anything. It's just adding this distraction. It's not adding anything useful. The interesting stuff you have around here is lost in the shadows. I'd also be tempted just to darken that down a little bit. Perhaps clone a bit of coal behind it or something, so it doesn't just peek through. The other issue we've got, again, is with processing. You really do need to improve your processing, because all around here where it's not sharp and you've got a bit of motion and you've got some out of focus, but it looks like you've tried to sharpen it, and you can't. Don't try. It exaggerates it and makes it look worse. So soften it a little more. just put a softening grad across there so that he stays sharp, because his eyes are sharp enough. You don't need to process it quite as much, but you can get away with that. But round here you can't. So I'd be tempted to put a grad on there of softening and of darkening and see how that works, and lop that end off. Then I think you'd have a much stronger image. As it stands, I'm going to give you a 7. Cartwheels. Yes. That's a fascinating wall you've found. Some beautiful flowers, and you can just about make out the cartwheels. They are a bit lost in there though, so careful on your titling. I like this lump of foliage you've got as a frame there. I don't like this camera and rest of the backyard that's beyond the wall at that side, because it's not doing anything. For me, the picture would have been further round, further round to your to the side, yeah. Further round to the left, and that I think would have worked. And then you could have cropped that off, left that as a stop there, cropped that down there, and you would have actually seen some of these cartwheels. And if you really want to make a feature of these cartwheels, then we don't need the rest of the wall. So a landscape of that with the cartwheels, then that would have worked with what your title is. So it's a lovely shot for Gardener's World or whatever, but for competition it just hasn't got the strength. From the angle that you're at, if that's all you could have done, then you could have done with getting lower down to make a feature of perhaps these. Get that really big in the frame, and the others going off into the distance in the background. Again, without the in fact, you don't need all the cartwheels, because you just have some interesting stuff there with a pleasant background. Right, you have to work with what you've got and do the best. So that one gets a 6. Invisible Man yearns for a boat. Yes, this is quite an interesting take on using somebody else's artwork, this statue, and you've made it your own, which is great. You've spotted this bloke here with his bandages on and this boat in the distance. You position yourself so he seems to be looking at it. Great. I think that works really, really well. Needs a little bit of finishing off. You've got these boys which are blurry down there. Get rid, just clone them out, dead easy. And you've got this very bright whatever it is in the distance there. You need to darken that down, really take that down, so that it doesn't demand your attention, which it does. As soon as you get to the back of his head, you drag down to there, and you've got to drag yourself away from it. Also, watch your processing. Don't use too large a radius. You're getting halos just starting to appear. But I like the idea, so I'm going to hold that one and see what we get. Next, standing tall. Yes. Love these 3 trees here, with that one just offset in the background there. I love the way you've stuck the sun behind, which has left this wonderful set of shadows in front of you, and this gorgeous light just creeping in the side of these trees there. Fantastic. I'm assuming it's on a golf course, because we have half a person right on the edge here and this other person just sort of sauntering along. He's the one with money and he's the one that's doing the karting. Do you need those in? Pictures here. You don't need those at all. So get rid. If you don't need it, lose it. because anything extra spoils your picture. Now, what you've got, I think, is very good. It has one issue, apart from this golf around here. You've lost the top of that tree, and you really do need that in. And the other is, yes, you've stuck the sun behind some branches, but I don't think there's quite enough branches there to take the sun out quite enough. I would have been tempted to get lower, perhaps get the sun behind that dollop of stuff around there, and then the trees behind it wouldn't have been so much in the way. You would have been able to see all the tree behind, perhaps a little bit to the side. You could have got, yeah, possibly that lot there, a good place to hide the sun. You'll still see it shining through. You still get the light coming out, but it won't be quite as dramatic, and it does clear these trees from the background. So worth having a think about it. As it stands, that gets a 7.5. Right, silent mooring. Now this is similar type of shot to the early mooring, or whatever it was called, misty mooring. One boat, some hills in the background and some water, but the feel is completely different. Here we haven't got mist, we've got very low light. It's a shame there isn't a little bit of direct light just hitting the boat. Maybe it's just gone a little bit too late, or it's a bit too early, one or the other. I do like the idea of the boat there. Again, I'm wondering whether you should have been closer to the water to give some extra strength to lift that up. Often a good idea to get down low. Compositionally, I'm thinking, yeah, you've stuck that pretty much on it's pretty much on a third or golden mean, which is supposed to be the strongest place for it, and it is a strong place for it. But you've got all this behind it which doesn't do anything. So rules are great, they're a guide. So I wonder whether you could have lopped a bit off here and strengthened it by having so much more in front. You could have lost a little bit of the sky, not too much. I think it's a good idea to have that bank of cloud where it is. But I think a little lower down and a little bit more light on it. Now you could paint a bit of light on that. You can see where it's just catching some of the last rays, and you could enhance that and give it a little bit of life so it really stands out. And just have a try cropping it and see whether that strengthens it for you. It might not. I think it would for me, but there we go. I'm not going to hold it because it's not going to go any further. I'm going to give it an 8. Jaguar. Yes. Cute little pussycat. And it's sitting there having a think all to itself. Now, I don't know whether it's under controlled conditions or whether you're out in the wild and just happen to sneak up on it while it was thinking about what it's going to have for supper. And hopefully you were not on the menu. But I like the pose. You've got all of it in. That's looking good. The background is a little bit messy, but it's quite dark. I think it's worthwhile taking these bright bits down because they are quite distracting. And as well as that, you need to do something about the colour, as it's almost monochrome, the image you've given me. It's all this one orange colour on everything, and I think with a little bit of tweaking, you could have sorted that out so it wasn't quite so strong on there. Needs a little bit more life in the eyes as well. So let's think. I think a 7.5 for that. Young squirrel deep in forest. Yes, I love that squirrel. Tufts just coming up. I think you've got the lighting just perfect on the head and body. Unfortunately, it's just caught the light on its tail, so that's blown out. And there's some odd things going on around here. I don't know what it is, but something really odd going on around there. And you got something odd going on around here as well. And something odd going around there. Oh, that could just be a branch going through. So I think you need to tidy your background a bit and your foreground, so whatever that is that's there, half there, again that one's dealing with. But whatever you've done here, you need to be a little bit more careful so you don't see any join like that, and the same there. So head's great, needs the brightness controlling a little bit, which means you'd probably have to underexpose and just bring it back up and hope your noise didn't get too much. 7. Sunbathing. Yes, cute, isn't it? Just sitting there, well, lying there on top of a bale of straw in the sun, and it's heard you creeping up to it, lifted its head, you've disturbed it, but it's not sure whether you're a threat or not. Are you going to get any closer? Possibly not. So, great idea. I think you've dealt with most things quite well, although the brighter parts have blown out, so you need to see whether you've got any of those left on your image. If you shot raw, you might just have another half a stop that might pull it back in. Probably not though. Again, you're up against it. You've got black on the face and white on the body. The white's got lots of light on it, the black on the face hasn't. So it makes life difficult. I think this is a shot, because looking at that, you've got quite low down. And I think this shot would maybe be improved by going higher. Although that, whatever's in the background there, might have been a problem. So perhaps this was the best you could do. If so, just lop a bit off that end off. That's gone quite blurry and we don't need the end of it. We've got one clean end here, but you don't need all this at the back. So if you've got it, try and get those whites back. 7. Pelican, wild and free. I'll take your word for that. And I love the way you've got down to its level. You've got it absolutely pin sharp everywhere it needs to be. Its eye, its beak, its tail, its feet, yep. Lovely backlighting, but there's enough light at the front to show the feather detail. And the lighting at the back isn't too much to blow it out. Great. That works very well. Couple of minor issues. The background is quite distracting. I know it's out of focus, but it's catching all the highlights, and those with the bokeh that you're getting from your lens, they're going quite bright and blobby. You've got a dark bit there as well. I don't know what that is. So perhaps a little bit of attention to take the highlights down on the background would help. And the other issue is your processing. It looks to be so sharp you can cut yourself on it. Now it may be that your lens is that sharp. It's possible. And I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. So I'm going to hold that. The large pot. Yes, there it is. One big pot. It's not a gazunder pot. Not without planting anyway. That would bring tears to your eyes, wouldn't it? And yeah, well seen. And I see you've tried to do some composition on this by having the window up on, well, it's in the middle really, but offset from the pot which you've stuck at the side there with some foliage around it. And yeah, I think to a degree it works. But if you're going to use that composition, you've got to lose that window and that sticky in bit, because those are really powerful distractions on the side. So you need to come down here somewhere between a couple of these spikes to make that composition work. Maybe at the time you could have found a stronger composition, again perhaps getting closer to that, moving round a little bit, having that higher up, well, behind it, sort of, so you're looking from there up through there, so you get both of those very similar. But with what you've got, don't be afraid to lop bits off, perhaps lop a bit of the top off as well, so to get some more strength to the juxtaposition of those two elements. That is very strong, but it isn't quite as strong as this. I would also be tempted to give this a little bit more definition, a little bit more life. Yeah, that would help, because it is quite big and there's not a lot of detail in there, so perhaps a little bit more. You can pull that out a little more, give it a bit more oomph to play with, and the background you could even knock back a little bit. So good effort. I'm going to give you 7.5 for that one. The ropes that bind, yeah, this is a study of this rope, and you've only got that bit that's sharp, the rest of it isn't. And yes, it works, because you've got this interesting bit of mess here where the ropes rubbed on it and rubbed the paint off, so that does actually work. I think this bit at the front is perhaps a little bit too bright, and I would have been tempted to lose some of that, because it does draw you out of the picture rather than the rope which pulls you in. Well, I think you've got pretty much everything you need on there. Say that too much. Highlights on there are going a little bit, so just take them down just a tad. I would also, if it was me, exaggerate the focus. So you've got a plane of focus through there, right through there, through the rope. And I probably would have been tempted to just put a little bit of a grad coming down there and maybe up there, or up there perhaps, that just darkened it down. Not a lot, perhaps half a stop might be enough, and then your attention has to go there. It can't go to the other places first. Not sure what I'm going to give that yet, but I'm going to hold it anyway. The Pythagoras cup. Right, so here we've got a record study of this cup, and it's all to do with the lighting. Does the lighting really show off the texture of this cup, the beautiful patterning that's on there, and the shape? And to a degree it does. The lighting you've got down here brings out those textures and brings out the texture of this engraving here. That works really well. Fortunately, you then got a big shadow coming in here, and it's lost that bit of light on there. So you need a little bit more light further down and less light from above to really allow us to feel that texture there. And the light above has also got the problem of you've got this burnt out highlight coming in around there, which is really unfortunate. When you've separated it from the mess in the background, you've done a reasonable job in parts, but not in others. You've got this dollop of sticky out stuff there that you've left, and the edges are not textured. You've got a bit of texture in that edge. You've got a bit of texture around there, but it doesn't actually quite follow. Round here, the bottom isn't quite right, and you've lost it completely around there and there. So I think it's a really good effort, but your lighting needs to be perfect for something like this to do well. I'm going to give you a 7 on it though. St Andrews. Yep. Beautiful St Andrews. You've got some strong light, but quite pleasant. It's showing the textures. You can see a fairly simple sky behind. That's working well. This sticky in bit of tree. There was a time not that long ago when unsupported dangly bits like this were just not allowed in images. But these days, you can get away with it. So I've no problem with unsupported dangly bits. And it does fill in this big area. That's good. Now, as an architectural record, the light is probably too strong to really work, because these shadows are very, very heavy, and you've got a lot of mess in the graveyard. Sorry, I'm not sure you need all this graveyard in, because you're losing so much of it in shadows. It probably would have been worthwhile taking several exposures. You could have done an HDR. If it wasn't windy, you'd get away with that as an HDR. But if it was even the slightest breeze, that isn't going to HDR. But you don't need that to. You can leave that and the sky alone. That's one exposure. And just separate out the shadows and bring the shadows in. And then give it a little bit of life, a little bit of punch, just to help. So, good effort. Watch your halos again. And I'm going to give you 7.5 for that. Tony. Yes. I must admit I have seen similar images. I don't know whether it was from you or even your club. I can't remember where it was now. But I think it's absolutely brilliant. I love the angle, the baton pointing in a similar direction to the finger, the eyes looking along it, the side lighting, quite dramatic, but the light at the back there just catching and giving that beautiful rim lighting. If I want to be picky, I'd like a little bit more light in that eye. And if I wanted to be really, really picky, I wouldn't want his watch on. But other than that, I think the idea is really well done. So I'm going to hold that one. Right, winter's scene. Yep, and you've got a winter's scene. You've got some water, probably a pond or a river or something. Probably pond. And these boulders sat in it. Mostly frozen surface, snow around it. So you can see what it is. You don't need me to tell you. Then you try to make an image out of it. Now, I like the way you haven't included the sky or too much above. That's good. I think you've done well there. You've got these 3 big stones and this area around here. as the main focus of your image. That one's a good lead-in to these. Now, I know some will say you need that over that side, it's got to go in that way because we read left to right. Yeah, well, for some people that'll make a massive difference. For me, neither here nor there, because you've also got a lead in from this side. So you've got a lead in up there and a lead in from there. So on paper it should all work. You've got bits in the right places. You've got some reasonable light. Shadows are not too heavy. You've almost got the textures in there. If you can just recover your highlights a little bit more, because with projected you never know how somebody else is going to see it, whether the screen is too bright, too dark, whether the projection's too bright or too dark. So you want to be on the safe side and make sure you can't mistake this texture. There is a little bit of texture there, whether that texture is burnt out or not, so err on the safe side. So yeah, lead in, big stone, lead in, big stone, another big stone here to balance it off, some other stuff in the background to keep it interesting. Yeah, it should work, but it's not. And you look at it and you think, why? Well, it's on a dangle, and that's always difficult when you've got water. You've got this big sticky in shadow here, which doesn't add anything, and quite a big area around here which is pretty empty. So I wonder whether if you, I know I'm at it again, lop a lump off there, don't cut through one of these stones, you'd either have to go that side of it or just that side of it. I think you could just about do that. Rotate it a little bit clockwise, and maybe try and focus on one of these, because they're all of a similar type of image strength, so you are flitting around between them. Yeah, it's leading in, but you're going from, that's an interesting blob of snow, and that's a pleasant looking rock. Oh, and there's another similar pleasant looking rock, and this one takes you right in there, and it's a lovely rock, and it takes you to this lovely rock, but there isn't one that's outstanding. So, good idea, well executed, but I think you need to work up a little bit more on your composition. As it is, I'm still going to give that an 8 because it's worthy of an 8. And last but not least, pen and ink. Well, there's no point me saying it doesn't look realistic and you've processed the life out of it, because that's quite deliberate. It is meant to be this arty feel to it, and I think the light you've got coming in over here, lighting this up, works really well. Not quite convinced by the feather on the quill. Not quite sure what's going on there, but it feels different to the rest of the image. The ink bottle has some distortions, not sure why, but it has some distortions. But for this arty effect, I think you can get away with it. Do I like it? Not really, it doesn't do a lot for me, but I like the idea. You've got a burnt out highlight down here, exactly as you should, because that's a specular highlight, and if that wasn't burnt out it would probably look grey and horrible. Yeah, I think this feather is what's, for me, holding it back. The edge isn't right. The cutout on the edge doesn't work at all. It's too regular, too even and smooth. So your cutout needs a bit more work, especially on this feathery bit. But that just seems so odd compared to the rest of it. It's very bright and noisy, and the rest is grungy but not noisy, and it's very dark and warm. This is very cold. So integrate that a little better, and I think it would have done even better still. Anyway, I'm going to give that an 8. Right, I've got 7. So let's have a see what we can do with these 7, shall we? I'm going to stick them up on screen and see what happens. Here we go. Right, now I have no idea what's going to win here yet, although I'm fairly sure by now. Yep, looking at that, I'm quite happy with the winners. So I'm going to go with, right, this pelican. Let's go back to the pelican. Yes. Now look at it again. The background and the apparent over sharpening of the front of that just lets it down a little bit. So that one is going to get an 8. Invisible Man yearns for a boat. The concept I think is superb, and if you could have finished it off by taking that down there and losing the other distractions, I think that would have got even more. As it is, I'm going to give that 8.5. Now, let's go with the ropes. Again, great idea. I love these close-ups where you're controlling depth of field. You just need to take it to the next level and control where we're looking at, not just with depth of field but also with brightness. So you need to darken that down and darken that down a little bit so it's not obvious, but the brain will pick it up subconsciously and just look at that bit, especially around there. So that one gets 8.5. Now, Peckles. Yes, that's one of the best versions of that type of image I have seen in a very long time. I think this bit here where you're just getting that brighter splodge coming in, and it's just a little bit on the soft side round there, that I think is letting it down a little bit, but it is only a little bit, and it's a lovely image. So that one also gets 8.5, which leaves 3. Oh, 3 very different images, but they're all quite emotive in their own way. Ooh, difficult choice, second and third. I'm going to look at them all. So there's that one. There's that one. And there's that one. Right. It is very close between these. That one I'm going to give 9, and that is third. And let's see who that is, by the way. That is Mark Williams. Well done, Mark. Eeny, meeny, miny. Empty glass. I think that works really well. As a technical exercise, it's superb. As a beautiful image, it's excellent. There's just a little bit round there that perhaps is holding it back just a tiny bit, but really well done. So that one gets 9.5, and that's by Paul Brammer, which leaves Tony as the winner, and that one gets 10. And first place, let's see who that is, and that one is Paul Brammer's again. Well done, Paul. Brilliant. Well, hopefully we've all got a little bit out of that, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. So I will see you very shortly for the second half. Thank you. And let's finish this. In fact, let's do that.